Welcome back to Top Stock Picks with my guest today, Eric Coffin. Eric, thank you very much for those three stories that you just updated us on, and very, very exciting. But there are three more that I'd like to ask you about. San Marco is a company that's a prospect generator, but really a prospect generator that sort of figures that they need to focus in on one project or so that they could take a little further themselves, leverage up with some exploration, early exploration, before handing it off to someone else perhaps. And trades in Toronto, SMN. You can buy it down here in the States as I have under the symbol SMREF. 56 million shares outstanding at around 16 cents Canadian. And they've used some unique remote sensing technology, I believe, Eric, to help them find some targets that might have been hidden otherwise. Talk to us a little bit about San Marco and why you like that one.
They've got a couple things going for them. They have 100% project stuff that they've been working on for 2 or 3 years, and they did announce recently that they're going to drill one of those Chunibas. The drilling should start within a couple of weeks. I mean, I think they had to do some road work, build some pads, but that one's good to go. They're going to do a small program initially, although management told me that they're ready, willing, and able to make the drill program bigger if they like what they see. Mm-hmm. Chunibas is a bunch of high-grade gold in shear zones. There's been lots of Gamperino activity there, local miners pulling the stuff out. They're obviously interested in the high grade. They've returned grades up to 46 grams off of these shear zones, but they're also interested in whether or not they can develop a bulk tonnage open pit type scenario. Mm-hmm. So what they're targeting 3 different parts of the trend, and they're going to drill a couple of holes in each area, but they're drilling one to intersect these shears, but also to make sure that they pick up the sort of the more disseminated stuff, because they do know there's some gold in the wall rock on both sides of these shears, that they can get, in an ideal world, what they're going to get is some high-grade numbers in the shears, but also some indication that there's grade over, whatever, 40, 50, 60 meters, something big enough to contemplate an open pit. Mm-hmm. The other project that they might drill, they might option. It's a target with the unsexy name of 1068. Mm-hmm. That comes out of this generative thing that I'll go into very briefly in a minute. But what they have there is a very large porphyry target, copper-gold porphyry target. It's right in the middle of a belt of known porphyries. The only reason I think this was missed by everybody else is because very little of the actual mineralized part of it's exposed. The hill that makes up this target is what's called a lithocap, which you get on top of porphyry deposits, and those generally don't have anything in them. They're kind of like cap rock almost. But they found in some of the deeper arroyos where they could get in and find some areas where it was eroded through this thing, where they could actually see some of the underlying porphyry mineralization. They got pretty nice numbers. I mean, they're not big samples because the exposures are small, but I think they average something like 0.6 grams gold and 0.4 copper. Mm-hmm. And it's a bit surprising because this porphyry belt doesn't have a lot of gold with it. But the target in total looks like it's at least 500 meters by a kilometer, and it disappears under overburden in one direction and may well continue. Mm-hmm. You know me, Jay, I'm a swing for the fences guy. Yeah. So you can bet. I think what I told management, what I want them to do. I'm like, screw this. Go drill the thing yourself, man. Yeah. Put some holes in it. Yep. Everybody knows if you're drilling a porphyry, it takes bazillions of meters to drill off a porphyry. It just takes so many holes because they're so big. Right. But the real action in terms of stock price movement, it's usually in the first phase. If you hit a real porphyry that's really got a shot, you've got potential to return 200, 300, 400 meter intervals, and something like that being reported by a company with San Marco's market cap, the stock would go bananas. So I'm all for taking a chance and drilling it, but I know they do. I know they have companies approaching them that want to option this. And 1068 came out of this joint venture they've got with a private company called Globetrotters. Mm-hmm. Globetrotters specializes in targeting using remote sensing. Globetrotters went through the entire state of Sonora using several different remote sensing techniques. I don't even know what the total number of targets they generated was, but it's ridiculous. It's like 200 or 300 at least. Mm-hmm. They handed those to San Marco. San Marco did a first pass filter, basically things that are on properties people already own and stuff. There's still, I think, 80 or 100 targets left. He's got 3 crews out in different areas, just going from target to target to target, ground perfing them. If they like something enough, they stake it. They'll work through probably dozens of targets over the next couple of years. Most of them will just get chucked. But really what they're looking for is that, 1 in 10, 1 in 20. It looks like it could really be something. And 1068's a perfect example of that, because this was one of the Globetrotters alteration targets. And even though it's right in the middle of a porphyry belt, as far as I can tell, no one's ever worked on this property before. And, 6 months later, they've got this great porphyry target. The stock's cheap. Management's very frugal. They're very conservative.
Mm-hmm.
If these guys are drilling something, they feel pretty strong that they're going to get good numbers, because these aren't the kind of guys that just throw money around willy-nilly. They're pretty serious guys.
Yeah. Well, it really is exciting. I mean, maybe they put some holes into that porphyry and they come up with some big intersections and they get someone else excited. They don't have to spend tons of money themselves to take it. They could hand it off to a major, and shareholders would be very happy, and they've got all these other targets to shoot at. I mean, to me, that's the kind of prospect generator model that really makes sense and has been successful, right?
Yeah, and they've said themselves, like, they're not discounting the idea that they'll option it, even ahead of drilling. But my take on it, talking to them, was they feel strongly enough about this that if they do a deal, it's going to be a really strong deal. They have definitely gotten approaches from 2 or 3 majors, and I think the message they've given those guys is, look, we know how good this target is. We don't have a problem optioning it to you before the drilling happens, but if we're going to option it now, it better be a pretty good option agreement. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. It makes more sense for us to put the first holes in.
Right, and
I don't know which way it's going to go. It could go either way, but I think if somebody else is doing the drilling, it's because they made a really good offer.
And they're exclusively in Mexico, I think, right? San Marco?
Yeah, they're pretty much. I don't know if he's got guys looking outside of Sonora. It seems like Sonora is pretty much the area they're sticking to almost exclusively.
Right. All right, well, a couple more that's Mexican related projects. GMV Minerals is one that you brought to my attention, and I'm following that fairly carefully. Trades in Toronto, GMV, GMVMF, and 31 cents earlier today. I noticed in Canadian money, 32 million shares. So it's also very low cap. This is a story of a really low grade, but some very favorable aspects of easy metallurgy, the way it looks. Maybe no blasting is needed, and I don't know. It's quite easy, and no crushing and so forth. Eric, I think you pointed out maybe not the sexiest assays, but nonetheless potentially very economic. And I understand that they've done some more recent metallurgy and also some step-out holes that are making it look like it could be a fairly substantial project. Potentially, right?
Yeah, I met with them a couple of weeks ago. I mean, they put out a long-delayed metallurgy report, and I think that's part of the reason why the stock drifted down. And I won't bore people with the details, but the delay in the metallurgy was logistical on the part of the lab doing it. It wasn't because there was something wrong with it. What they came out with was actually quite good.
Yeah.
You got to understand metallurgy to understand that the recoveries that these guys are talking about, and they intentionally sampled a very low-grade area. The grade's actually slightly below the cutoff grade of the stuff they used in the test column. But, I talked to their consulting metallurgist, who's a very well-known, well-respected metallurgist. And he's, his comments were, look, I don't know what, he's like, I don't know what people are looking at. This is some of the best metallurgy I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I do. The metallurgy is fantastic on this property. And that's really what attracted me to it.
Yeah, I know.
Even though the grade of the resource is 0.7 grams, and you kind of think, well, 0.7, who cares? But when you're dealing with oxide heap leach projects, what matters is how well it leaches, how fast it leaches, and what the recovered grade is. Not what the grade in situ is, but what comes at the other end of the heap. In their case, the early test work was showing like 90% recoveries, even with big, even when they were sort of leaching big chunks of it, when they didn't really have to blast it or grind it or do anything. It looks like it could be run-of-mine, and run-of-mine means very low capex. Mm-hmm. They've got 530,000 ounces now. It's definitely going to be bigger. The drill program they finished about a month ago, they hit on just about every hole. They were all step-out holes. They started drilling again. They're apparently also hitting on every hole. They'll do a new resource as soon as this drill program is done. My expectation is, I'll be shocked if the 530,000 ounces isn't at least 50% bigger after that. And you start getting up to 800, 900,000 ounces, 1 million ounces. That's where people really start paying attention. And with this metallurgy holding up, the combination of size and metallurgy, which implies very low capex. It's in Arizona. It's almost in Mexico. Southeast Arizona, should be a relatively easy place to permit. I mean, they've never had any problems getting drill permits or anything like that. The landowners there's really only one local landowner, and that's a rancher that's all for this. He's really behind them. I think this thing is extremely undervalued. The market just isn't getting it. It's probably the most frustrated. The management is so frustrated. I think you're going to see not just a whole bunch more results through the summer, and then the big news, which would be a new resource, and immediately following it, they'll start doing a PEA. I think the PEA is what's really going to wake people up. But I think you'll see promotion in the meantime, because I talked to their CEO yesterday, and he is so frustrated that he feels like he's not getting this across to the market. So I think you'll see him really pounding the pavement going forward.
Yeah, I feel like he's not getting into the market too, because I think my investments cut in half almost, and I really believe in this project, Eric. It looks really good to me from what I can see, and I suppose low stripping ratio too there, right? Another factor.
Yeah, I was surprised, because it's a bunch of separate zones. I mean, they make this up. And when I talked to Dave Webb, the guy that runs the programs is Dave Webb. He's a PhD geologist, and his forte is actually resource calculations and modeling. That's what he did his PhD on. And I was surprised. He said, the strip ratio is actually not that high here. And he said one thing that will be potentially quite important is, if this metallurgy keeps looking as good as it has, he said keep in mind that one thing that's quite possible as we get through PEA stages, that we drop down the cutoff rate. And the cutoff rate, that's where you determine what goes into the heap leach or what goes in the waste pile. And he said if you drop like the 0.3 cutoff to 0.2 or 0.15, he said there's a huge amount of this stuff just below cutoff outside of the zones, where he said your strip ratio would, which isn't high to begin with, would drop right down, and you'd just be dumping everything on the leach pad. And guys I've talked to that understand this type of mining, they're paying attention to this stock. Don't be fooled by the way it's trading. There's some fairly big boys watching this thing very closely. This is another one where I think if things work out and it grows as much as I think it will, the metallurgy holds up and the PEA looks as good as I think it will, this is another one that I don't think is around long after that PEA.
All right, so it's not something. It's not likely this management team would move it forward on its own, even though it is a low cap, relatively small.
They're quite willing to do it, but I suspect somebody takes them out. And I like most guys who specialize in early stage stuff and promotion. I think Ian Clapton over a glass of wine would tell you, look, I'm not a guy that should be running mine.
Right. Oh, for sure. Yeah. All right. Well,
one do it.
Exactly, to make sure that they optimize shareholder value, take it as far as they need to, till they get a better deal. Well, one more yet I want to ask you about, Eric, and that's Almadex, prospect generator, but again, one of those that seems to be able to figure out amongst their large portfolio of properties one or two prospects that have the potential for them to take it a long ways themselves and leverage up value. They've done it once. It looks like they're on to a second or third one already. And they were presenting at the Metals Investor Forum as well. Just give us an update on that one. I really like this story as well.
I think it's a great deal. I mean, Almadex is a spin-off from Almaden. It's run by the father and son team of Dwayne and Morgan Poliquin. Morgan is the son. He's the one running Almadex. Almaden, I would say very briefly, is another deal that has, a new discovery deposit in Mexico, and that's another one that I frankly will be surprised if it's Almaden building the mine. I think they get taken out too. It's got really nice coverage to gold and silver prices, but Almadex, they knew they weren't getting any value in Almaden for all the other stuff, so they spun it all into Almadex about a year and a half ago. They basically own a whole series of properties in the eastern side of Mexico, and this belt is really, it's kind of the Poliquin belt, because it was really Dwayne and Morgan who came up with the rationale behind why there should be gold and copper deposits here, staked a lot of it up. They're focused right now on a property called Norte, which is just outside of Veracruz. The logistics are really good. It's about as good as it gets logistically. There's power lines on it. There's a nuclear power plant like 5 kilometers away. There's a port 20 kilometers in the other direction. It's flat. There's 2 or 3 landowners. There's no ejidos. They started drilling this again last year, and they made a discovery called Norte, which is looks like it's a lowish, moderate grade porphyry. It may have some pretty good size potential. They've got 2 rigs running there, but what really has me jazzed up about this one, and it didn't come through so much in the talk they did at Myth, but it came through anybody that actually went and talked to Morgan or Doug McDonald in their booth. This new discovery, and it's literally a new one called, they're calling it Rhea Trombrillo. It's right in the middle of the property. It's overlying the biggest IP chargeability anomaly. They always knew that was the biggest anomaly. The problem when you get an anomaly that big is where do you start? Where do you put a drill hole? Because you don't want to drill a big target like that and blow it in the first couple of holes.
Right.
So they sent guys out again about a month and a half ago, and one guy just took the right turn, I guess, when he was going up an arroyo. He discovered a very large slope of actual honest-to-God outcrop. It's something like 200 by 200 meters intermittently. The entire slope it's all oxidized, so you don't get much copper at the surface, but as soon as they started breaking rocks, they realized they were really onto something, because he brought a piece of this to Myth with him that grades 4 grams gold. It's totally altered. Like, I have no idea what the original rock was, but the amount of soft remaining in this thing is unbelievable. And Morgan looked me in the eye and he said, I think this may be the best outcrop I ever find. And this is not an RMIT guy. This is a PhD geologist, a serious guy. And those guys were so jazzed up about this, they were vibrating. They're building trails and pads right now. And this guy, apparently another PhD geologist, and Morgan, was kind of self-effacing and ironic about it and said, you don't normally send a PhD out to find outcrop because they usually can't find them. But this new guy that hired seems to have a knack for tripping over outcrops. Because they found 2 or 3 other areas like this now, but the original one, this Rhea Trombrillo, they're building pads and trails right now. They probably start drilling in, I don't know, a week or 2. One thing about Almadex is they own their own drill rigs and they train their own crews, and their drill is really low. They drill for $30 a meter, which is like a third or a quarter of what it would cost anybody else. He told me there's 4 rigs on the property now. 2 of them are drilling at Northey, and they'll continue. But the other 2, they'll get on Trombrillo right away. And these guys are really jazzed up about this. And I'm not a guy that, I tend to sort of look at properties first and then management. But when I see guys like this excited, I take it seriously. I'm buying more of this thing.
Yeah, I agree with you, and it's certainly Morgan is, he's so professional, and his father as well, who works with him, and no, they don't come across as, they don't hype anything, but when
they're not, they don't, they just don't. That's just not how they.
It's not their style. Yeah.
No, and he wasn't saying it. You would have had to stand and you have to know Morgan, but he wasn't saying it as an arm wave. He was almost. It sounds funny, but he almost sounded like he felt bad about it. Because if you're an explorer, you always want to find new stuff. And he was going, I think this might be the best outcrop I ever find. He was almost like depressed about it. Like, I want to keep finding really good stuff, but I might not find something better than this. It's the way he said it. They kind of went, holy crap, I better pay attention here.
Yeah, it's, AMZ is the symbol in Toronto, and $1.18 today. It's up a few pennies, but there's only 48 million shares out. So it's any major discovery here, one of 2 properties, a couple of different shots at this thing here could really drive these shares higher. And these guys have such a good track record. They're really consummate professionals. Really are. Really love this story as well.
They got 6 or 7 million, I think, in working capital right now, so they don't need to go back to market again recently. The other thing that they own that Doug McDonald, the corporate development guy, is always frustrated that they don't get more credit for is one of the things that got spun out to Almadex from Almaden was royalties on Ixtaca, which is the Almaden deposit. Yes,
that's right.
Feasibility. Sarah Blanco, which a third-party company owns, which is right next door to the El Cobre property that they're drilling right now. And a couple of, they own 3 or 4 royalties that in other companies and royalty companies would probably get valued for half of their market cap. And I don't think the market even pays attention to the fact they own them.
Yeah, a lot of hidden value there in that company, I think. So it's thanks for that, Eric. Thanks for the update on all these stories today. They've always appreciated your insights and the hard work that you do and your knowledge, quite frankly. I think it was Brent Cook that said doesn't know anyone that knows the players in this junior market better than you do. So always appreciate it, and we'll look to do it again several weeks down the road. Eric, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jay. Sorry to be long-winded again.
No, never to apologize for that. Your wisdom and knowledge is what we're after, so thanks so much. Well, folks, that is it for this week. Next week, I expect to be talking to Brent Cook or his sidekick, Joe Masmender. So until then, goodbye and have a peaceful, happy, and prosperous week.